Haven't seen the 1984 movie Quest for Fire, you need to check it out. In this movie, one caveman tribe who loses their fire and does not know how to start a fire sends 3 of their tribesmen to find a flame to replace the one they lost. It's quite an adventure. It's even a love story, all told completely in made-up languages by Anthony Burgess. Now, as the 3 tribesmen battle mammoths and other cannibalistic tribes, attempting to communicate with a lot of gesturing and hollering, much like we communicate today, they find that the only thing they seem to have in common with other tribes is a reverence for the flame. That flame that binds us. More than 1966's 1 million years BC with Raquel Welch, or maybe something more sophisticated, 1968's 2001, A Space Odyssey, also with cavemen. This movie gave me pause to think, just when did we become so tribal? I like to think we're just one big human family. So much so that I had it tattooed on my right upper arm, right underneath a UU symbol and chalice. Now, recently, I ran into an issue with this phrase. Last year, when we were reading and analyzing Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham jail in my class, I asked students to bring in supplemental materials and visuals as part of our discussion. And that's when this showed up on my screen. Yes. Now, if you look in the middle here of the triangle at the bottom, it says, as a racist indicator, but we're just one human family. Yeah, you can imagine my horror when I saw this, having just had it tattooed on my arm. Then I saw this as tribal, because really, that's what it is. And this is a problem for our beloved communities. Tribalism, a strong loyalty to one's own tribe, party, or group, may provide us with security and comfort, basic human needs, but it's not moving us forward. We need to be uncomfortable, much like I felt when I saw this racist indicator on this template. Race is many tribes, obviously, and racism seems to be an unfortunate consequence of this tribalism. American society seems to be, at this point in time, de-evolving into a culture where being white is an expectation for the full-blooded American. According to Webster's dictionary, racism is defined as a belief or doctrine that inherent differences among the various human racial groups, tribes, if you will, determine cultural or individual achievement, usually involving the idea that one's own race is superior and has the right to dominate others, or that a particular racial group is inferior to others. This is not us. Nonetheless, I'm glad I'm white and a Dane. I'm lucky to have found a white partner, a German, and we're lucky to have white friends. Among them, Swedes and other sundry Europeans. Yes, we have some friends of color, of course. Don't we all? Yeah, I can't be racist. I have black friends, Mexican friends, Asian friends. Unitarians don't see color. Sure we do. Either that or we're colorblind. Colorblindness is not part of the solution here. It's part of the problem. And this is one of our first challenges in defeating racism. Harvey Wingfield, in a 2015 essay in The Atlantic, opines colorblindness is counterproductive. Lauren Rankin, a freelance writer and reproductive rights activist, calls colorblindness the new racism. Zach Stanford, writing for The Guardian, claims, when you say you don't see race, you're ignoring racism, not helping solve it. Is the erasure of color barriers even possible? Is this really the American dream? Ta-Nehisi Coates, one of our most celebrated authors on the issue of race in decades, declares in his book, Between the World and Me, that the American dream thrives on generalizations, on limiting the number of possible questions, on privileging immediate answers. The dream is the enemy of all art, courageous thinking, and honest writing. He calls it a specious hope, constructed out of the progress of those Americans who believe that they are white. Unfortunately, that white progress is exploitation and violence, based, he says, in plunder. Clearly, Coates sees the American dream as a myth, a hoax, a veil that we hide behind, which actually inhibits forward motion in our struggle to understand and diminish racism in our society. Like religion, issues of racism divide us, not just by skin color, its simplest construct, but by ideology, by geography, by economics. Racism is an issue today, and it will be an issue tomorrow. Now I understand why one human family is racist. I just have to buy a lot more long-sleeve shirts. Now, it would be unfair, I think, and stereotypical to make assumptions about the tribal preferences of our congregation. But I'd make a bet that we all belong to many of the same tribes. We're sitting in one now. Think of a Venn diagram, the circles that come together, that continually multiplies and divides. And you can see we all belong to many different tribes. Variations of those tribes, and tribes layered on tribes. It gets complicated pretty darn quickly. Moreover, while the word tribalism itself carries a connotation of distrust and unrest, we often make assumptions about labeling tribes. Perhaps that's our problem. Think about all the tribes with which you identify. Let's start big. From a science perspective, we all belong to the human family, Homo sapiens. At some point, it does sort of come down to the Garden of Eden, at least metaphorically. We were at one time one tribe, or at least a lot fewer tribes. Then it gets a little more complicated, especially if you're a frequent visitor to Ancestry.com. We seek to know our ethnic tribes, and our history has plenty to say about the brutality of ethnic divisions, particularly when they cross racial lines. Again, all of these complicated tribal crossings. But let's narrow this a little more. If you're a citizen, you're part of the American tribe. Are you American? You better be if you're living within these borders. Oh, and if you're American, I'm betting you're a Republican or a Democrat, or as a Unitarian, maybe an independent. And just what is your address? Because we all live in tribal neighborhoods. We even like to build walls around them with gates, special codes to get in. Hell, we're even building walls around our country because these walls, well, I think Robert Frost said it best. Before I built a wall, I'd ask to know what I was walling in or walling out, or to whom I was like to give offense. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that wants it down. What we're really doing is walling in one tribe and walling out another. This is not progress, and it will not work. Walls and tribes don't mix, at least for Unitarians. Religious tribalism is as old as civilization itself. This is our religious tribe, or as some might prefer, our spiritual tribe. But wait, we're not all Christians? Aren't most members of the American tribe Christians? Well, yes, a majority of that great melting pot is Christian, but that's dwindling, according to Pew Research, from around 78% in 2007 to around 70% in 2014. Our seventh principle calls on us to respect the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. Of course, we have Christians in our congregation, some of those real Americans, but we welcome everyone, even those outside the Abrahamic tribes, from Buddhists to Hindu and atheists to agnostics. How could we be tribal when we welcome every religious tribe? Because we are gathered here under one purpose, we are tribal. And while we may think we have this little puzzle solved with Unitarianism, I'm guessing we all fall short from time to time on religious tolerance. When's the last time you criticized an evangelical Christian? Got a lot of Wiccans in your circle? When's the last time you ventured into a Southern Baptist church? Oh, yes, we know the difference. Civilized tribes don't kill. Terrorist tribes kill. Civilized tribes promote peace, harmony, and understanding. Terrorist tribes, well, they terrorize and kill. And by any human standard, that is not moral and accepted behavior. At least from our tribal point of view. Religious tribalism is as ancient as it gets. And from the Crusades to focus on the family, we're still fighting religious tribal wars. We've only to study the caves of Central Africa or the pyramids of Northern Africa as proof. Unitarian Universalism is not quite that old, but its basic principle of harmony is. Yes, with a little effort, we can make progress and move forward. Social tribalism is inherent in Americans. Religion might bind some of us. It might provide us comfort or even salvation, or it might tear us apart. Race might bind us. Racism may tear us apart. But social status, that's largely about money. Religion and race, not so tangible, but money, that buys stuff. That buys status. And that buys power. Is it even possible not to pursue wealth and social status in a country steeped in capitalism, competition, and the American dream? We just wrapped up reading The Great Gatsby in my English class. And most of my students concluded, if this is the American dream, I don't want anything to do with it. Wealth may buy us stuff. It may buy us status, but it does not bring us happiness. That seems to be Fitzgerald's moral of the story. And Jay Gatsby, in his desperate attempt to move between social classes, finds himself shot dead in his own swimming pool. No matter where you turn today or what you're reading, you're likely to hear about the 99%, or on the other side of the coin, maybe the 1%. Unless you are one of those 1% or know some pretty wealthy people, I'm guessing most of us are sitting in the 99% group. According to the Washington Post, the movement Occupy Wall Street claims to represent 99% of Americans who've been left behind, while a tiny minority of wealthy earners continue to pull ahead. So, who are the 1%ers? It depends on where you live. Their number is slightly down from an average peak of annual salary $646,000 a year in 2007. These are according to calculations by the Tax Policy Center. By contrast, the bottom 60% of Americans earned a maximum of $59,000 in 2010. The bottom 40% earned a maximum of $33,000, while the bottom 20% earned just $17,000 maximum. And that gap continues to grow wider. The top 1% of households took a bigger share of overall income in 2007 than they did at any time since 1928. These disparities are vulgar. And of all the tribes that we delineate by social class may be the most damaging. Ideally, Unitarians work for the common good. Ideally, money shouldn't matter. Ideally, stuff is just stuff, right? Except when you can't buy dinner, or gas, or health care, or an education. Like it or not, wealth and poverty classify Americans, and those are tribal classifications. So, laying out these pictures of tribalism is fairly easy. Whether they be political tribes, religious tribes, cultural tribes, educational tribes, ethnic tribes, LGBTQ tribes, or gender tribes. The list is endless. The solutions are challenging and difficult. I don't pretend to have the answers. But we are Unitarians. If we are to live in a beloved community, we Unitarians do have 7 principles which can guide us in narrowing the gaps between tribes. It's not enough for us to reach out and try to understand other humans, which is just the beginning. We must reach out and try to understand other tribes. In sociology, might prove just a little trickier than psychology in accomplishing this task. The project Teaching Tolerance was founded in 1991 by the Southern Poverty Law Center. And the magazine Teaching Tolerance is utilized by over 500,000 teachers across the country. Their noble mission is to help teachers and schools educate children and youth to be active participants in a diverse democracy. I was probably one of the first ones to bring their ideas into my classroom. But over the years, I've wondered about the word tolerance itself. I'm not sure if it's enough for us to just tolerate other persons or other tribes' views. No doubt, tolerance trumps hate. Thank you. I knew someone would get that. But tolerance of persons must be distinguished from tolerance of ideas. It's not enough for we Unitarians to tolerate another point of view. No, we don't have to embrace our theoretical tribal enemies, but nor should we ignore them. We should embrace their thinking in an effort to understand them. It should occur to us that as much as we may tolerate another point of view, that we often turn right around and think, but I'm right and you're wrong. Stop and think. Your opponent is thinking the very same thing. And no progress is made. No forward momentum. For the last 2 years, in addition to my teaching duties, I've been working as an instructional coach at my school. One task every teacher must master before learning can occur is classroom management, that is, behavior. Now, this is one concept that I've been able to teach my colleagues fairly easily. It's not in your classroom policies, and it's not one of your rules. You cannot demand good behavior. You must command it. And no, sending them to the principal's office won't change them. It's simply a matter of respecting the kid, respecting their points of view, no matter how different from your own, and teaching others in the classroom to do the same. This is a concept that we should bring into all our lives. After all, a classroom of kids is just a little tribe, which brings me back to one human family. The day this slide went up on the screen in my classroom, I rolled up my sleeve. Showed my tattoo to my students, who, knowing me, gasped a little themselves, and so another discussion began. And that's what we need. I explained what this phrase meant to my tribe and how it might be misinterpreted to mean something else by another tribe. That this simple phrase had more than one meaning, more than one connotation, and that we were lucky to have this opportunity in our little tribal classroom to talk about that, so that we might reach an understanding and not be so quick to judge. I mean, it could have been worse. I could have had tolerance tattooed on my arm. Tribalism tears us apart. It's a real problem for the beloved community. But in this beloved community, this community I'm looking at right now, it is our charge to bring tribes together, because what is that beloved community if not one human family? Just let us imagine it.